thing for an entrepreneur, especially a startup entrepreneur, is to understand the full scope of your business, to make sure all your core pillars like product, people, marketing are just up to par. Like none of them is really, really low. So you need to get them to just good enough level that you build resilience in your organization and that people start doing this themselves. I think that capability is really important in an entrepreneur.
Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Passport by Econsulate. Today we're joined by Michiel Gaasterland. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
You were with the House of Narratology.
Exactly right.
When we were talking to you, I wanted to start off with a quote, which is actually from yourself, which is, you're under no obligation to remain the same person you were a year ago, a month ago, or even a day ago. You are here to create yourself continuously.
Is that my quote?
That is your quote, yes. So what is the kind of person you are here today?
Yeah, I guess I am somebody who embraces, self-development and transformation. Who I am today, it's quite a deep question,
isn't it?
It's
a big question, yeah.
It's a really big question, and you should, ask others. You get a probably more honest answer. But I guess I'm first and foremost Janine's husband and father to Mees and Rijk. I'm a brother, a son. I'm a partner to Steve at the House of Narratology. If you ask them, I'm hoping that they say that I'm kind and loyal. I think I'm tenacious as well. I'm quite determined in what I do. Hopefully free-spirited and non-conformistic and, fun to hang out with, hopefully.
Yeah, and if we take a step back and also looking at your professional background, you worked in the music industry before.
Yeah, correct.
You worked with quite some big names as well, right?
I have actually, yes.
Which ones are we? Might the listeners know?
I've been quite privileged to work with. First of all, Radiohead was sort of like a big one that I worked with quite extensively. Coldplay, Foo Fighters, Beastie Boys, Robbie Williams, Supergrass, acts like that. I was a product manager and later head of marketing promotion at EMI Music. This is the 90s, so
different times,
different person. But it was a great time. It was a really, really great time.
Mm-hmm. And what made you essentially leave that industry? Because I feel like you were in a spot that many people want to get to. You were at that spot and decided to go for something else.
Yes. Oddly enough, I think I actually got bored. That sounds really weird because it's sort of really exciting, but it's also a lifestyle. So you're at a gig like every day nearly, and intellectually, I think I sort of seen it. So I got jumpy. I wanted to do different things, so I sort of jumped the grid and started doing other stuff. And now I'm here.
Yeah, and
still a huge music fan, by the way. I listen to music, every day. So
there we go.
Yeah.
But long story short, you ended up at the House of Narratology, and a lot of people know about storytelling, about narrative. But what is narratology?
Yes, people are waking up to narrative, all right. I mean, narratives are, different stories all sort of like lumped together as events, and they're hugely influential to people's behavior. So I think people are waking up to that. Narratology is the study of narrative and narrative structures and how they influence human behavior. And we, as the House of Narratology, we live in a subfield called applied narratology, where we apply narratological principles, practices, and logic to real life challenges. So this can be anything from, leadership, organization, data, marketing, or communications, strategy, even in healthcare, there's examples of narratology. So I can maybe give you the example of a strategy example. Strategy is usually, seen as quite a sort of like a dry process, quite analytical. We view it really different because we think strategy is a different thing in every company. Some companies are just only starting to do it. Others have completely formalized it. So that has it's a very different thing. We work hypothesis driven. So pretty quickly we come up with a coherent story. And then start testing that, because in narratology is all about developing coherent thought, something that hangs together. I mean, when you're watching a movie, you feel when it hangs together. When it's not, when a character is out of line or a dialogue doesn't work, you just tune out. This also happens when people look at your company. You either pull them in or you create distance based on that story you create. So like I say, we work really hypothesis driven. So we create that hypothesis and we start kicking it, we start proving it, we start disproving it, we start adjusting it, and this is where strategy and story really come together. I think a quote from a big VC is, "Your strategy is the story." That's what that is about. Your story is not just marketing; it's really your narratological representation of your strategy.
This is where my questions come in. How, if you work with entrepreneurs, how much are you looking at the entrepreneur itself, the entrepreneur's background, what motivates them, what drives them to keep working on the company every day, and how much are you looking at the company itself? So what the company does. How much do you think does that go hand in hand? The motivation of the entrepreneur, but then also what they're doing. So in case, like to build up the story, is that something that you take care of as well, take into consideration?
Yeah, I don't think it's a prerequisite. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I don't think the journey or the narrative of the entrepreneur necessarily has to map the journey and the narrative of the company. You know, we're not all Elon Musk or, you know, Steve Jobs, these people that their stories are so intertwined with their company. I think personally the most important thing for an entrepreneur, especially a startup entrepreneur, is to understand the full scope of your business. And to make sure all your core pillars like product, people, marketing are just up to par. Like none of them is really, really low. So you need to get them through to just good enough level that you build resilience in your organization and that people start doing this themselves. I think that capability is really important in an entrepreneur.
And is this especially what you're helping with? Because for me, it sounds like it's kind of a process where entrepreneurs might also need to take some time to understand things for themselves, so that they might think that they already know it. They might know their concept. They might know their business model. But thinking and building about the narratology makes them think about it differently.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. So we are not your typical, strategic advisory or consultancy. We do much more training, coaching, and sharing of knowledge. So the very first thing we're doing is we're now creating a course, a foundation course for narratology, so that people first get familiar with the principles and the underlying logics of thinking in narrative structures before we actually sometimes help them, sometimes not. It depends on what they want. I think for our, sweet spot is a bit more towards the scale-ups, because in a startup, 10, 20 people, everybody sort of like knows the story. But once you get 30 to 40, you need to scale that, and when we come in and ask a boardroom to each member to write down the mission statement, I get 5 different mission statements. None of them are on par. So none of them are aligned. So this is really important that you then start aligning on story. Your value proposition needs to be scalable. Your mission needs to be really well explainable, like all these story systems. We call this a strategic narrative. You really need to understand the red thread of your company.
And how does your own background, or maybe also from some of your team members, how does that help so that you can help those entrepreneurs?
Well, I think Steve is our principal. So he developed this whole proposition, and he developed it through years of experience, and also being a really eclectic guy. Being a musician, an ex-dancer, he understands film. He reads a lot of books. He's worked in the Middle East. He's worked for corporates. He worked for small. So he's really eclectic and is quickly to sniff out hypotheses. So this is also something we do in a 2-hour session, where a hypothesis emerges, where people go, "Whoa, how did you get that?" And it's not magic. It seems magic, but if you understand all those underlying principles and are able to pull in stuff from different places, you get emergence, new connections emerge, and new stories emerge. So I think this is sort of how we work in the core.
Mm-hmm. And I would still like to ask you 3 quick questions with 3 quick answers, ideally. Which organization do you think is killing it with having a very clear narrative? A good narratology.
That's actually quite a tough one, because I do see actually more companies that are really they're trying to find their narrative, because it's the world is so much in change right now. But maybe to give you 2 examples, I think Netflix has got a really good strategic narrative. Your product quality intent is really clear from Netflix. And maybe an example closer to home, Wolters Kluwer, financial company. Their tagline, which is sort of a synthesis of their strategic narrative, is when you have to be right. all right, this is about data and finance. So that sort of these values of trust and accuracy are just deeply embedded into the company, and you feel it when you come to their website that it really hangs together quite well. So these are two examples that I can name.
What is one thing every entrepreneur should have a clear answer to when being asked about it?
Well, it depends on which stage, but startup entrepreneur, value proposition, no doubt. You need to be able to articulate your value proposition really clearly. And not just the product, but also how you deliver it, the service quality, your story on price. That needs to be clear for all the people who work for you. If anything, it's the value proposition.
The last one piece of advice for your younger self.
Oh man, it's hard to choose because, there are so many pieces of advice I would give myself. But I mean, when you're young, you're really busy with your environment, and you're really busy interacting with your environment and tuning that and changing stuff. So, and if you change something in your environment, it can have an impact on you. But if you change something inside yourself, the impact is much greater and much more transformational. So, to cut it short, my advice would be know thyself and practice inner engineering.
We'll take that in. Thank you very much for all the information and for joining the podcast, Michiel Gaasterland.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Cheers, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.